Hey everybody, so today we're going to talk about how to write your need statement or your problem statement for your grant proposals. Hey everybody, this is Tiffany with Boston a Budget. I help new and small nonprofits get up and running. So if you are a newbie in the nonprofit world and with grant writing, I know you're frustrated. I know when you see a grant proposal and it says, explain your target population and the needs they have that you're trying to address, or if you see something that says, provide your problem statement and that's it can be really, really intimidating to figure out what to write and you can be confused. So this video is going to help you figure out what the heck to put in this section of your proposals and how to move forward with submitting your grant proposals for funding. So the first thing I want you to realize is that this is one of the most important sections of your proposal. So the funders are going to look at your budget, they're going to look at your need statement, and they're going to look at your program activities and your goals and objectives. Those are the meat of your proposal. Those are the areas where you need to spend the most time putting together information for your funders. So this is not the section where you skimp on details, where you don't provide enough information. You need to spend a lot of time proving to your funder why this is necessary. And the mistake that people make is that they think that talking about a need means I need to talk about what my organization needs. That's not what this is about. This is about the people or the things that you serve. And you need to explain why those things need you, not necessarily why you need money. Because every nonprofit needs money. They want to get to the impact. They want to get to the people that whose lives you're trying to improve. That's what's important. It's less important that you keep your lights on. Okay? So make sure when you're writing out your problem statement, it's more about the needs of the community, the needs of the people you're serving. So here are some things you should think about when you are writing out your need statement. So first, describe what the problem is and make sure you're clear on why it's a problem. So when you're talking about the problem, identify who is impacted by it, what is the issue, where is the issue happening, when or how often does the issue happen? Okay, so I like to go old school and just say who, when, where, how. Remember that exercise you did in school when they made you write articles? I do the same thing. So I just break down everything there can be about what exists in the community, why does it exist, and who is it impacting. And you're going to focus on who it's impacting by talking about what they look like, what are their demographics, what are their typical experiences, why is it a particular issue for them based on their demographics or based on how they live or where they live. So, what you're trying to do is create a story. You want to create a picture about who it is you serve. And the point of this is to eventually make the point that your organization is the best to fit them. So the whole point of this is to justify why funding is needed to serve them. So you're basically setting up for your funder, hey, this is such an issue for them, but we're the right people to do this. We're the right people to solve the problem. So just remember that as you're writing, that it's not just to write, but it's to make the point that your organization is the best organization to fit their needs. Another way you can help flesh out this section is to talk about what will happen if this problem is not addressed. So if we don't address it now, or if we don't do something about this problem now, this is what's going to happen. And what this does is it increases the sense of urgency. It makes the reader feel like, oh my goodness, if we don't do this, it'll have an impact on our community in this way. It'll have an impact on our society. It'll have an impact on our country. At whatever level you want to talk about it, make sure you play up a sense of urgency so the person reading it is like, oh my goodness, you're right. I may not have realized before why this is such an issue, but I definitely know by the time I'm finishing reading this that it is an issue. The other thing you can talk about is what's being done to currently address the problem. And that's the way you can play up any gaps that currently exist in the community, because then that's what you're going to do to say, okay, We're here to fill that gap. We have the capacity to do that, but we need your help. We need your support to do that. So, one way you can think about this is, say, for example, you have a program that helps connect youth with employment. And you can say, well, right now we know it's an issue because if kids are not employed, they're more likely to be at risk for justice involvement, or they're going to be on the streets and have nothing to do. So, right now we have a summer program that employs them for 6 weeks. But you can talk about if that doesn't go far enough. Well, maybe the program doesn't pay them enough, or maybe the program doesn't last long enough to give them the real on the job skills they need to make it. Or maybe the program doesn't connect them to long term jobs to help sustain themselves. So that can kind of identify the landscape that exists so the reader can be like, oh, you're right. That's something, but it's not good enough. And then you come in as an organization and say, that's why our program connects them with job counselors, or that's why our program goes beyond that and helps them build on the job soft skills, things like that. Though the way you set it up is to make it seem like, hey, this is a problem that exists. It's a gap that nobody's thinking about, nobody's talking about, but we are, and we have the best way and the best approach to deal with it. The other thing you should definitely be doing in this section is talking about, what does the data say? What does research say? So you should absolutely have data on who your population is. So going back to the beginning of the video where I talked about what are the demographics of the people you're serving, use data to back that up. Don't just say, we serve people who are struggling with this, or we serve young people. Well, what do they look like? What are their ages? What are their races? Where do they live? What's their educational background? All the things that are relevant to what you're talking about, put that information in, but quantify it and use numbers. So you can use numbers in your general community, but you can also use numbers that you collect yourself as a nonprofit to say, hey, we serve 300 youth a year, and this is what our youth look like. This is how old they are. All that kind of stuff you can add to your grant proposals. But the other thing you can say is, well, what does the research say? Right? So the research says that young people, if they are connected with job counseling, or if they're given soft skills, then they succeed. Then they have these outcomes. And again, remember, you're building a case. You're making a case for why your program does that, right? So you're going to put in research that confirms the work that you're doing. So this is all connected. You have to remember that the person reading the proposal needs to draw those connections. They need to understand that it's a problem, and it's a serious problem, and you or the organization can do that. So you have to draw that connection for them, and you can do that by putting in the data, putting in what the research says, and then following up with that and saying, and this is how we address that, or this is how we solve that. The last thing you should consider are stories. So when you have a big section of your proposal, it can be a lot of words, it can be a lot of paragraphs, and people's eyes can glaze over. So this is not the time for you to just add in a bunch of data to make yourself look smarter, or add in like big fancy words. This is not the time for that. This is the time to make a compelling ask. It's like you're building a story through the data, through the numbers. You're making the case for why this is an issue, why this is urgent. You're building up to that climax, and you're saying, but never fear, we're here to address that, right? So you're building a story, but you can also actually include real stories as a part of the overall picture that you're drawing in your grant proposal. So if you have quotes from people that you serve, or if you have small stories about this person, when they came to us, they didn't have any education. They felt like they weren't going to make it. They felt like they weren't going to live to 22. They felt like they didn't have a chance. But as we work with this person and we got them confident, this person is now working. This person can support themselves. They can support their family. Again, use real life connections to draw a picture of why you are important, why you are needed, why you're making a good impact. And a great way to do that is bring in human stories, bring in actual quotes from people, actual experiences to add flavor, put a little sprinkling on your grant proposals so that when people read it, they'll remember it. Put in stories and put in things that people will remember, and they'll say, oh yeah, they're doing good work because look at the impact they're making on the community. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. I hope now you have some strategies to better write your problem statement or your need statement in your grant proposal, I have a bunch of resources that I'm going to drop in the description box below. You can also visit me at www.bossonabudget.com if you have any questions. I have a grant writing workbook to help you kind of go through all the questions you may have in writing your first proposal. And I also have a free grant readiness challenge. So if you want to get yourself ready to write a grant, these are these 7 things you should consider as you're getting prepared. So thank you for watching my video, and I will see you next time.